live. And this is a special segment on business interruption insurance and things you need to know about the COVID-19 crisis and how it might impact your business and some of the options you might have that you don't know about. And so I asked our insurance provider, KMRD, to put together some education, and they'll come on live as well. So we have a PowerPoint we're going to share. Hopefully it will work. And I did a test of it last night, so I think the method I'm using will work. First of all, can you all see me? Let's make sure about that. Anybody who's tuning in, so before I get going too much, I want to make sure you guys can actually see me. Had some problems last time. So those of you that are coming on, what do you see? Actually, I suppose I could just check my phone on the Home Staging Talk live page. Let's see if you guys can actually see me here. Oops. Home Staging Talk. Okay, let's see here. Let's see, how am I doing this? Oh, you can see me. Thanks, Nora. I guess that's just easier to ask people. Okay, perfect. Okay, great. So we are going to be talking about business disruption in your policy coverage, what you need to know, questions to ask your carrier. And I am happy that we have KMRD reps. We have Mike Brown and Bob Dietzel, who are both here. So I'm going to go ahead and I forget what's the Mike. Let me show you on stream. I'll put you both in here. So I should be giving you guys the countdown. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. So go ahead and share. So Mike and Bob, I will make sure we can hear you. So let's see here, because I had some problems with my last show with sound and trying to get this thing in here. Oh, get over here. Come on. I can't see. Oh, there we go. In stream. Okay, good. So Mike, say something. So we can't hear you. You're I can see your mouth moving, but I can't hear you. And then Bob, I think I heard you. So you're fine. Your audio?
Yep.
Okay, good. So now Mike, say something.
You're better off.
It might be your thing might be on mute. Oh, actually, no, I'm sorry. Now say something. That's my fault.
Hello.
You know what it was? You were typing before, and when I first came on, I could hear the clicking, so I muted your microphones. That was my fault. I apologize, everybody. So they're here. So Mike and Bob, tell everybody who you are and tell about a little bit about KMRD.
Go ahead, Mike. You first.
Mike, do you want to share a little bit about KMRD?
I wasn't sure if it was Bob or I. So yeah, KMRD, we have the endorsed program for insurance for the home stagers, and we've had that for, I think it's about been like 3 or 4 years. Yeah,
at least, which has been great. And so KMRD is they have an insurance product for the staging industry that's specific for stagers. So a lot of us have their plan, and I reached out a little over a week ago or so, maybe a week ago, asking about business disruption insurance. What does that even mean? And so I'm going to put the PowerPoint. I'm hoping this will work. So I have it actually on my. You guys won't be able to advance it, so I'll have to advance it on my end. But hopefully this will work. So let's put this in here and see what happens. Okay, so who's actually going to talk on the slides?
Bob Dietzel.
Okay. Yep. So I'm going to, let's see here. I do this. I'm just trying to fuss with the screen setter. So Mike, what I'm going to do, I'm going to see if I shrink you down. That might give us a little bit more space to see the PowerPoint. So let me do this. I'm going to hide you.
No problem.
Okay. Okay, good. All right. So as a business owner, most of us have insurance. So talk about what, I'll advance the slides so we can kind of see what we're going to cover. So can you all you guys who are tuning in, can you see this fairly well?
It's a little small, but I could also share my screen if would work better.
We could try that, but we could try sharing your screen. The settings might not work with the PowerPoint because we might lose you. We could probably still hear you. Do you want to try it?
Yep.
Okay, Bob Dietzel's ready to share his screen. Okay, get rid of this. Hide. Okay, give me a notice. So say that Bob Dietzel's ready to share his screen. So let's see, where is he? I don't normally do this with show and stream. Okay, so this is your screen. So it's still small because you're in the middle, but you can at least advance it, right?
Yep.
Okay. So let's kind of talk about the agenda and things you're going to cover, and then kind of start working our way through and why this is an important topic. I didn't even know the term business disruption insurance. I didn't even know what that was until I started, like, what are some of the options for a small business owner? And that's when I reached out to you guys. So let's talk about what that means.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, Jenny. Appreciate it very much. These are trying times for all business owners, or non-business owners, for everyone. So we're doing our best to communicate on how insurance may apply or may not apply, and what to do during this crisis. What we'll talk about first is to have a loss in the insurance. On the insurance side, you have to document the loss. So we'll talk about that. And then we'll go through the various coverages that your members may or may not have, such as workers' compensation, general liability, professional liability, business interruption, which is what everyone's wondering about, acts of civil authority, which everyone is hearing about, and of course, reporting any claims that you may have to the carriers and access to other resources that that may be available to you through us and other avenues. I got to say some disclaimers. Every insurance policy is different. Some of you may not purchase the coverages that we're talking about, and so what we recommend is that whether you insure through us or not, have a specific discussion regarding your specific circumstances with your agent or your carrier. Also, I want to make sure there's no property loss unless you can prove it, and the burden of proof is on you, which we will talk about. KMRD obviously are there to advocate on your behalf. We can answer questions or be your advocate regardless of whether you're a client or not. We'll do that as a favor to Home Staging, who's a nice partner for us. Let's first start documenting your loss. This could be the most difficult thing for a lot of companies. You need to create a folder, write notes. You need to ultimately prove the loss to the carrier. So, for example, track your revenue and expenses before the event, during the event, and after the event. And the key will be to when you deal with your carrier is whether the after the event may offset during the event. So if you have more contracts going forward because you're not working today, the carrier will argue that you don't have a loss. So
someone who has like historical revenue streams. So like I know every year how much I do. January, February, I keep track of it every month. How much revenue did I do? So I can look back last year and go, okay, this last year in March, we did X amount. The last 3 years, expectation would have been this year, we would have done the same, but because of the virus, the sales are down. So that would be a loss that I can actually demonstrate that business, if business had been normal, I would have been able to achieve this X amount of revenue. Would that be a good way also to reflect that?
That's exactly the way to think about it. However, you have to also take into consideration subsequent in April, you may have double the sales that you have. So therefore, the carrier is going to argue that will offset your loss, and therefore you don't have a loss. There are certain industries that it's more difficult than others. So, for example, if you're a collision repair store and there's no cars on the street, those collisions that would have occurred will never return. So fortunately, in your business, you may have contracts outstanding. Keep in contact with your clients, make sure you don't lose that opportunity, and you may not have a loss, fortunately. The other piece of the equation is any extra expenses that you may incur. So, for example, the cost of really temporary office space or warehouse space because you have too much inventory because your customer's not ready to have you go in and place your inventory in their home. Moving expenses, overtime if you have employees, supply systems. And believe it or not, communication programs, data overages. So if you're doing more marketing and more communication through systems like this, then that may be a covered portion of your claim because it serves to reduce your business income claim. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. So let's talk workers' compensation. If you have employees and an employee gets the virus and can prove that the virus was contracted, not necessarily prove, but at least create some evidence that the virus was contracted at work, workers' compensation will apply. There won't be a problem. Healthcare insurance. I think you've heard a lot about this in the news today. If you do have healthcare programs, there's a lot of federally mandated changes going on through the Family First COVID Family First Act that has been in, so you can get access to unemployment more quickly and things like that. Carriers are also, Aetna's, the healthcare carriers are also waiving co-pays for testing, things like that. They're doing the best they can while still trying to maintain a profit.
Right.
General liability. So general liability is really a core piece to most of the insurance programs we provide for your family of stagers. General liability at its core provides coverage for claims, lawsuits, demands, allegations of your negligence caused bodily injury, property damage, and personal injury. Now, personal injury is, false arrest, detention, libel, slander comes up from time to time in your space, and also advertising injury, which is someone else's advertising ideas in your business. Those are important. So coverage applies for all allegations on these policies except as excluded. So you're covered for everything except whether in your contract, your policy contract, is removed. Give you an example. Is COVID-19 covered by this policy? Well, the answer is, unfortunately, maybe. Generally, yes. This is an example of a policy that has an exclusion on it. CNA is a prominent carrier in your group. This exclusion removes coverage for any claims arising out of or in any way involving fungi, mold, mildew, yeast, and microbes. But fortunately, at the end of this policy, and the message here is the words matter and their detail matters. The last sentence of this says, microbes does not mean that which was transmitted directly from one person to another person. So in the code,
it's covered.
I would say yes. You have an argument, and with us as an advocate, we would hope you would. Professional liability. Not all of your stagers buy professional liability. Professional liability is designed to cover economic damages arising out of any mistake or alleged mistake you may have. Now, these policies do not cover bodily injury or property damage. So COVID-19 related claims, as you can see in the red circled images, there's an exclusion on the policy removing coverage for any actual alleged bodily injury, sickness, blah, 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 blah. So don't look to your professional liability policy. Property and business interruption, which is why everyone is joining us today. Business interruption is an insurance term. It includes two components, the business income piece, which we talked about earlier. Technically, that is your lost profits during this period and any continuing expenses that are ongoing obligations, such as debt, that you may have during the downturn or during the time you have ceased operations. Extra expenses we talked about. Not everyone purchases business interruption insurance, and not everyone has both. You can have one without the other. Go ahead.
How can you tell if you have it or not? I mean, you look at your policy, it'll say something on there.
Yes, it should. In the first few pages, called the declarations pages, indicate that you have business interruption or business income coverage. Most of the stagers that we insure, if not all of them, have business interruption coverage. Yes. So, of course, The coverage is provided for a 12-month period. Hopefully we won't need 12 months in this case, but the coverage only triggers after what they call a covered peril. So is COVID a covered peril? Well, again, I'm sorry, maybe is the answer again. And this is subject to a lot of debate right now, and actually some lobbying in the federal government, because most policies, all policies, most every policy you have to have direct physical loss or damage to a tangible property to get access to this coverage. There is some court precedence, however, in some states that temporary conditions like bacteria on a desk or a property or a piece of or a person could constitute damage. There are some law firms out there taking that position. They're trolling for customers, of course, so they can sue carriers on their behalf. But we're hoping more and more has been transpired over the hours and days politically in this, and whether the government may get involved in the interpretation of what property damage is.
Well, and a part of that is also they are the ones mandating a lot of the shutdown. The government, the federal, and then of course the local. So we just this morning, the 3 counties around me are supposedly shelter at home. They still consider real estate a necessary service, so we can continue in that vein. But I don't really know. So a lot of people that have been, I feel like I'm echoing, stuck with a shelter at home. So if the government is the one telling you can't work, is there any fine print or some interpretation that we might be able to use that as it wasn't my choice to stop, it was because of this situation, and then it was legally mandated?
That's an excellent segue into what I'm going into next.
Okay.
The issue of this too, I just want to make sure you understand this, is that if the government steps in and forces carriers to pay claims like this, it could cripple the insurance industry. And there are constitutionality arguments out there right now that are in play. What we expect, this is a KMRD theory. This is nothing that after 9/11, the concept of terrorism insurance came into existence. Terrorism insurance is nothing more than a government-backed insurance mechanism that is attached to your policies. Most of your stagers have it. The carrier is not providing the coverage, the government is. However, the carriers are administrating the claims. So we think that this is where it might go going forward. Going backward is another question. So what you just spoke about, and we'll talk fungi coverage, don't go there. If you need we'll skip right over this. If you see that in your policy, it will not apply. Acts of civil authority is what you're talking about. So an act of civil authority is, we have the same situation here in Pennsylvania. No one can, no non-critical operations can be. So we have restaurants, we have all kinds of operations that are down right now. However, in the policy, again, the language is important. You need to have direct damage to property other than property at the insured premises. So for example, if there were a storm and we had Hurricane Sandy up here in the Northeast, the city of Philadelphia, the mayor prohibited anybody from leaving their homes for a period of about a week. So nobody could get to their jobs. Nobody could go to the manufacturing facilities. That's a clear act of civil authority, but there was clear property damage there because there was a hurricane. Trees were down, buildings were damaged, etc. In this case, we're back to that argument of whether a bacteria or a virus can constitute direct damage to property. Okay, we expect this type of coverage generally only applies after a 24 or 72 hour waiting period, which is a form of a deductible. And it's generally sublimited to about 4 weeks of coverage only, which may not be enough. I have seen some policies that extended that coverage to 12 months. We're hoping that your members are the lucky ones if we can gain access to that piece. So there's where acts of civil authority is where we will trigger most of our customers' policies if we can get over that direct damage hurdle.
Yeah, because I think for most stagers, it's the financial piece that they're concerned about. Although I was making some notes, there's been a lot of people who have, like, for example, we have houses that are staged, that are vacant, and then we're being told you can't leave your house, and then the houses are still closing. So our stuff's stuck in a property. And I'm like, listen, if I can get a truck, as Kevin Tain said, if U-Haul's open, I'm open. So, I would go get my stuff out because I don't want the house to close with my items inside, because technically the buyer has possession. They need to move in. What are they going to do with my stuff? Are they going to kick it to the curb? Are they going to toss it in a garage? There could be damage with that. And so we don't want to break the law as a stager. However, we also have thousands of dollars sitting in a property we don't want to lose. And so, and I know you probably can't answer this right now, but that scenario, how it plays out, if a stager's like, I physically can't go get my stuff out, and then it does get damaged, they would have a right to a claim, right?
Well, if there's direct damage to your property caused by whatever cause, likely you do have coverage for your property in someone else's home, et cetera. That's a pretty key coverage that we provide. You mentioned the moving expenses. The moving expenses could be an extra expense that you have to that you can make as part of your claim in the acts of civil authority claim, because you're doing it to avoid a loss. You're doing it to protect your property in some form or fashion. So I wouldn't go rushing out and spending all kinds of money, with a moving company right now. But there is a chance that that could become what we call an extra expense component to the business interruption claim.
Right, and then I even think on the income side, like I have people reaching out to me. Well, it's probably too expensive to have to come pick all your stuff up. So why don't you leave it in here in the house and don't charge me for, 2 to 3 weeks, and then we'll revisit what's going on. So these are the clients who are proposing this. So that's lost revenue. I don't have to leave the stuff in there, but logistically it probably is a better option. But that's lost revenue, and it could be thousands of dollars to stagers who are now faced with, do I go get all my stuff and cram it in a warehouse? Or do I leave it sitting in a house? They're not paying me. They're not able to pay me the rental on it. Stagers then can't pay their warehouse rental, and some of the warehouse, landlords are being boobs, and they're saying, either pay up or get out. I can't believe this person in Canada, this group, GAIC, I think is their name. But the fact that people are not willing to cooperate is really disheartening. And so, but it's a snowball effect because, it impacts me. Then I'm like, I can't pay my bills. Then I'm calling my car company and, the car payment and the house payment, all these different things you're calling to, because it's a snowball. And at some point, I don't know where it all ends. I don't know if it's who's left holding the bag is my question.
Yeah, it is a very difficult situation. From an insurance perspective, you're going to have a challenge too, because, you're not being paid for this, your property being in the location. The insurance company said, well, if you move it to another location, are you avoiding a loss? Meaning you have another opportunity to get fees for your goods to be stored somewhere else. If not, the carrier is going to claim that you don't have a loss, it's a.
If you have a signed agreement, so let's say someone's supposed to pay $2,000 a month for inventory, and they come in and saying, well, they're trying to negotiate that, like, we're not going to pay you, we'll pay you half or whatever it is. To me, that is, and I'm not able to move it to their property because we're on lockdown. That is lost revenue. That's what I would argue. Would that be correct, or would they still be like, well?
Well, I agree, and I'll have to bring it back to the similar exposure that a real estate company would have with tenants. And tenants are not paying their rent because they're not generating revenue. And does that trigger a loss? The answer is yes, if we can trigger the acts of civil authority clause, or we can trigger a property damage component that because you can't let someone in your restaurant because it may be contaminated. When I say maybe, the carriers are saying, well, if your restaurant wasn't contaminated, then there's no loss. And this is not going to be an easy issue. Carriers are publicly held companies that try to make profit for their stockholders, and I expect we're going to have a lot of debates going on, and coverage may only apply to those who have the energy and wherewithal to pursue the carrier in an aggressive manner, and even in a legal fashion. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to collect as much precedence as we can, use that precedence to convince the carrier to do the right thing based on what they're doing for other people. So you don't have to hire an expensive attorney to sue your carrier for coverage.
Yeah, which is good. And then you guys are advocates for us.
Yes. Yeah, that's our position. You're our customers. The insurance companies are our suppliers. So we serve you first. We'll do anything we can to help you. Ultimately, the carriers will take a position of whether you're covered or not. That position, if negative, may lead to, there may be some legislation out there that if you do not have the coverage, or you have a written denial from the carrier, you may be able to get access to relief funds from the government. That has not occurred yet. That doesn't mean we suggest that everyone rush in and make a claim, and so they can have a denial so they can show the government to get relief. We're seeing some of that, but there's no evidence that is the right thing to do at this point.
It's a good tip, though, and I think, I know with all the bailout money and so forth, I'd rather see the government put money towards the insurance companies who are going to be impacted versus corporations and these other people that are, last time they used it to buy back their stock and, line their coffers. And so we don't want that to happen again. But I think it's definitely interesting times. If I'm able to, so as a stager, my whole goal is to stay viable. And there's some people who have larger operations. They got big warehouses, which come with, the bills, whether they own it, if they're leasing it. Hopefully the landlords are being cool about not having to pay. And again, that's, an individual decision there. I don't think that although they did have a mandate or something, I saw that it was the home lenders, Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, any of the lender, they're saying give loan forgiveness payments. And by the way, and I did check with the lender on this, people thought, well, let's say they gave up to 12 months of forgiveness. At the end of that time, people are thinking I have to come up with the whole, let's say it's $36,000. I have to come up with that whole bulk payment all at once. And that's not true. They're basically going to tack it on and work out the details, and hopefully wouldn't last that long. So I'm hoping that a lot of these other entities will be reasonable, because the impacts are far reaching. So, the process of this, obviously we need to start documenting things now with record keeping, and hopefully, as we always say, keep good records for your business. Whether it's you don't have a monthly snapshot, you can't go back 5 years and tell me exactly how much you made March 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19. If you don't know that could be a challenge. You may have to do the tax return and then average it out over the year and see where you are. But what is the time frame for doing this? Should we start doing it now? Do we have to wait until it's all over and then put a claim in? I think cash flow is king right now.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I don't really have an exact an answer to that. That I understand cash is king, and the carriers aren't going to pay these claims quickly. So don't expect that these claims to be resolved quickly. There's a lot of unanswered questions. They're going to take a defensive stance initially. When do you report the claim? Right now, our stance is that when you believe you can document a loss, and we're in the middle of the loss right now. So if you were to report the claim now, the first letter you'll get from your carrier will be, we're not covering, we don't, well, first of all, we're going to give you an issue, what they call a reservation of rights. Here's where we think the policy may not cover your claim, which doesn't mean it's a denial. It's a reserving their rights. But then they will say, okay, prove your loss. And if you can't do that, they're going to put you at the bottom of the pile. And so being first one in won't necessarily lead to a cash settlement more quickly. It's how well you document the claim initially. Go in there with a rifle, not a shotgun. And you mentioned earlier it's snowball effect and contracts. I would make sure that if you have a contract with a customer that obligates them to pay you rent for the storage of your inventory, then and they default on that contract, you have a legal right to pursue them. Now we want to be cool, but at that time, so we have let in the claims, for example, where we had a lease and the tenant was a workout facility, and the workout facility wanted to stop paying their rent. They went into abatement. There's going to be a lot of abatement discussions regarding leases and renting situations from a legal perspective and a government perspective. But we reviewed the policy of the tenant, and the tenant had that ugly virus exclusion on their policy, on their property policy, and therefore that policy didn't have any coverage for COVID-19, and therefore which would have funded the lease obligation. And my customer wouldn't have to file a loss of rents claim against their carrier. So that's a whole, what your customers have on their homeowners policy may also be a source of funds for you.
Which is true. And then as a stager, there's always the option of, like what the lenders are doing, tack it on the back end. So if the house is going to remain on the market and the intention is to sell it, take that piece that they haven't paid and tack it on and get title, get paid at closing for that one piece. For me as a stager, I'm not going to be like, let's put everybody at closing because I need money, I need cash flow to run the business. But that's also an option. And I don't think that we want to be helpful to our clients and so forth. We don't want to go under because of the situations. There are options, immediate funding options. Doesn't sound like this is the route to go for the immediate cash flow, right?
Unfortunately, I think you're right.
And yes, so Deep D, we'll have copies of the slides. I'll put them up on the site so you can see them. So is there any, so I won't keep talking. So keep going, Mike.
No,
I'm sorry.
Your questions are all great, and I'm glad you're asking them. I'm almost done. This small writing, and I see there's a comment. We will make these slides available to everyone after the session, no problem. And actually, we can post a link to this presentation on our website as well, and the Stagers program page that we have. So this is just a lot of small language that's inside of your policies. On the left is Hanover, the right is CNA, and you can see where everything I talked about, which is it doesn't trigger until 72 hours or 24 hours on the right, and there must be direct physical loss or damage to property, and it lasts 4 weeks in both cases. So reporting your loss, we already talked about that. This is the information for everyone that is insured with us. We'll make this available to everybody to have a conversation with Mike Brown and or Debbie Preen, who manage the programs, but really they're supported by a lot of other people, including myself. We make sure that you get the answers you need. Obviously, questions are coming in at a high rate with a lot of volume. So if it's an urgent question that needs to be answered due to some other issue that's going on, make sure you let us know. Give us a deadline. We're trying to get to everyone. Email works best for us, but phone call will work as well. and we'll make that available. Again, document. Lastly is we do have a resource center on our webpage. The very far right-hand, we have a COVID-19 resource center. That resource center has frequently asked questions on healthcare, on property and casualty. It also has links to various government websites with announcements, all fact-based resources, no sales pitches. We're keeping it very, very flat at the moment and very fact-based. There's a lot of inaccurate, fake news, whatever you want to call it out there on this subject. Feel free to access that at any time and reach out to us for any questions that you may have.
Awesome. So is that the last slide?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to hide this, and I'm going to bring Mike in. So Mike, we're adding you back in. There you are.
Hello.
So hi. So that's a great. So we'll make the slides available. There'll be a link. I also have a copy of the PowerPoint I can upload. But I think having the link and having it go to your website where there's more information, I think it would be most beneficial for everybody. So what I, kind of in summation, what I was hearing is, really good record keeping. The financial piece, I think, is where most stagers will approach this. Unless somebody trashes our inventory, I don't think our furniture and so forth is really at risk. It's not like it was like a hurricane where it's damage to the actual property that we have. The inventory side is more of the business interruption, that piece of it. And so being able to show what your normal expected revenue would have been, then what you actually were able to achieve. And then, as Bob said, let's say this thing, middle of April, all of a sudden the veil is lifted and we get to run business as usual. And you have like, crazy April and May, and that offsets what happened in March to the middle of April, then there wouldn't be any payout because they're going to take a look at the revenue, which is fair.
Yeah.
What do you guys, and as far as the, I know this isn't maybe your wheelhouse, but there's the getting funding, immediate funding. There's obviously the federal government is trying to do the bailout, but like the SBA loans or the small, there's regional, some state related legislation in the federal. So from your perspective, what would be the best avenue to pursue for trying to get some sort of stopgap?
In the resource center, you'll see some links to the SBA.
I just want to check. So the best resource is, we'll have information on our website, as well as, contact your local, your local representatives in government, your county government, your town government, see what they have available. Chamber of Commerce's have been a very good reference point for me for finding out what funds are available out there, because they advocate for businesses as well. And just do as much investigation as you can to try and find other sources that can, put a Band-Aid on it.
I would also, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I would also reach out if you do have a commercial banking relationship. Your bankers are there and understand the issues well. If you have a line of credit, it may be a little late to ask for an increase in your line of credit, but some are saying that maybe a good time to take some money out of that line of credit, so as to prevent a bank from reducing the available funds from that line of credit. But the bankers are also another place, and of course any obligations you may have, whether lease or contractual obligations, reach out to your landlord, have them understand your situation, ask for an abatement, and understanding, just like your customers are asking you at the moment. Those are other indirect accesses to preserve your funds.
And I'm amazed, like some of like B of A, for example, came right out and they were like, loan lender forgiveness, whatever. Wells Fargo hasn't even made a statement. So I've been tweeting the Wells Fargo people like, what's up? Because I have my car payment through them, but they haven't said anything. Capital One, we have credit cards. My son got his thing waived, and my husband called and he got this really rude lady who didn't give a crap. So I think it really depends on the company. And I also want to warn people against predatory financial people who are going to seize this opportunity to say, hey, I can get you some quick cash, but it's really a hard money lender. And it'll be like, 30, 40% interest, which really, we don't want to go into debt or harm our businesses trying to stay afloat. So I think, exhaust all the other avenues first to and tighten down the hatches, figure out what expenses you have that are not necessary that you have going out, cut those off, and then you can always resume them. Are there forms that we would fill out? I mean, when we go to the site, are there links with forms we would fill out to submit for the business interruption side?
No. What we'll do is we want to be a little bit more fluid on that way. There is in the Client Access Center, there is an area to report a claim. So if you want to see the kind of questions that we ask, go to our Client Center and it says report a claim, and they will that will get things going on our side if need be. Otherwise, we really want to have a conversation first if we can, and anything that you have, throw at us. We'll also give you resources to report your claim directly to the carrier if that's what you would like as well. So we'll do our best.
Well, I think it's really important. And so people who are watching, do you guys have any questions you want to quickly type and I can ask Mike and Bob quickly? We will provide the copy of the slides. So the resource centers on the kmrdpartners.com, the resource center that they're talking about. So go to the website, even if you don't have their insurance right now, which we do recommend as the stager. It's a great policy because they get rid of a lot of the extraneous stuff that's in a general liability policy and these things. And they really specified it for stagers. So if you don't have a policy, you can't get it and then backdate it for what we're going on. But moving forward, you definitely want to be protected regardless of a situation like this or not. And it's very affordable annually. So we have to be protected. And, none of us could have predicted this situation, right? And to know that we do have potential benefit from our policies, a piece of the policy I never would have even thought I would even need, and it's in there. So I'm thankful that the way you guys crafted the policy for us, because we do have a layer of protection. And of course, it'll be up to the insurance companies whether they'll honor the policies we pay for. We don't want to bring them to their knees. I have sort of a love-hate relationship with insurance companies because you need them. They're like the necessary evil, and you hope you never need them, right? You need to have the coverage, but you hope you never need it. And so hopefully they'll stand behind the customers that need it, and the government hopefully is taking a look at that piece, because I haven't seen a lot of discussion on the insurance side. It's been all about the employees and the employers and so forth, but not a whole lot about insurance companies. They talk about the airline industry and so forth, but you're right, it could be pretty catastrophic, which would then cause rates to go up and so forth. So any questions from anybody? Anything else you want to say? So Mike, do you have any last thoughts?
Just thanks, and everybody be safe, and and we'll be here to answer questions.
Okay. How about you, Bob?
Stay well, wash your hands.
Yep, wash your hands. Well, thank you guys for being on. I appreciate it. And the special segment obviously is recorded, so we'll have it available to everybody who was not able to tune in live. If they don't have KMRD insurance, you said they can still reach out to you and talk to you, but you need to take a look at their policy and then contact their carrier. And hopefully they have an advocate like you guys are on their side. And if they don't, consider getting KMRD insurance, because you would have had an advocate. On the inside, I would like that advocate on the inside. Thanks you guys for being on. Stay safe, and hopefully we will be over this within the next month is my hope. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Thank you.